Hello and welcome back to another Demis Hellen tutorial. We are going to take a look at some reverb today and how I've used a couple of techniques to let the melody poke through, to add a bit of depth to the mix, and just taking advantage of Fabfilter Pro R, which I haven't really covered yet, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to show you what I'm doing with this particular melodic sequence. So we'll just have a quick listen and then we'll have a look at how it's processed. Alright, so you can hear that the melodic sequence is quite sharp. It's not as sharp as it could be because it's not dry, but we can emphasise this with some of the techniques that I have done. So let's end that there, and we'll head over to the mixer and we'll take a look at the synth line. So we have the synths going through a bus, and we've got multiband compression and some mastering compression here, which is doing the mid-side mode to widen up the sounds. And then we have it being sent to a synth reverb channel, which is this purple one, and we've got Pro R attached to this. Now there's quite a lot of drastic stuff happening here, and I'm going to explain what is happening. So if we make a copy of Fabfilter Pro R and we jump into the settings, you can see that we have quite a lot happening. And the first things first is, if you take a look at the yellow line, this is the line that is basically EQing your reverb. So you can set the reverb to exactly how you want without having to do it with EQ after, with a third-party plugin. You can just do it all in-house and create the exact effect you want. So you can see that I've made a boost here and quite a harsh cut here up to 264 Hz, and that's because I don't want reverb on the lower end, I just don't want it there. So cut it out and have all of this kind of emphasised. Then you can see that we've got a roll off here, so I've just rolled off the high, so the reverb's not really twinkling right up at the top end because it can kind of get messy. And then we have this blue line, which is the decay rate, so you can see here decay rate EQ, and the higher you push this, so if we create a new node, if we push it higher, this is determining how long the decay is happening on the reverb, so it'll take a lot longer if you push it right up to 200%. If you bring it right down to well, I don't even know what that is, I'm just going to say 0%, 12%. You can see how fast that decay rate is operating. It's literally falling off straight away before even the sounds got started. And it's slower and slower and slower till you get to the top. So using this technique, I've sped up the mids here, and then I've really sped up the upper mids here, which is the bit that I've boosted. So that emphasises the reverb on the top melody, the offbeat part, because that's where it operates mostly in that space. And then I've used the decay rate, so it really decays off really, really quickly. So let's just take a listen to this without the decay rate on. Can't really hear anything, and that is because we're not really tuned to hear much. To the trained ear, I can hear that it's starting to overlap and create extra harmonic content, but what that's doing is removing it as quick as possible from that previous note, so the new one, the next note in the sequence, is primed and ready for essentially nearly zero EQ in that area. It's not quite perfect, but it's a really good tip and trick to use on your melodies, because it's getting rid of that reverb as quick as possible, letting it sparkle a little bit more. So you can see the settings up there, that's nothing special there. It's just this section here using the decay rates and the EQ to hone in. If we just remove this bit of EQ, and put it back in, it's just boosting a little bit. I'm not trying to go drastic, I'm not trying to make it sound huge with this reverb, I'm just trying to tune the reverb in a little bit and just dial it back. So that is the reverb, and using the decay rates, that's the good first starting point. The second one is you can use a variety of other techniques. to accompany this, and this one being the sidechain that you've just seen from the melodic sequence. And what that's doing is focusing on the same area of frequency, and it is emphasising the compression on that section, and it's set to sidechain mode, so this melodic sequence is being fed into it. So this is the offbeat melody, what sits on the top of this track. So I've isolated this from the chord structure that is actually operating below them, and this is the bit that I want to poke through, and you can see this is triggering this compression here. So if I remove these notes, you'll see there's no triggers to trigger the compression. And the reason for that, obviously, is to then, in turn, duck the reverb channel that it's attached to. So every time it hits, it's reducing the reverb volume by that much, which is about 8 to 9 decibels, respectively. Now, we can increase that, we can dramatise that and make it really obvious, but it starts to sound really processed. So that's where just focusing on the section here, using the EQ on this compressor, and then just tailoring it to the sound. So if we just bypass this again, just gives it a little bit more bite, but at the same time it is raising the volume of the reverb around the notes. And obviously you can control that with the release. The quicker the release, the less of the reverb you'll hear on either side of these notes. The longer it is, the longer it'll take for the compressor to react and unreact, basically using the attack and decay. So you want it fairly sharp, so it's kind of an on and off motion with a bit of a ramp. And that is probably the two best tips that I can give you in terms of making sure that melodic sequences poke through. There's many ways you can approach this. This is just the way that I do it, and I thought it's a good opportunity to show off how Pro R works in terms of using reverb. And with Black Friday coming up, I'm pretty sure that there's going to be some deals on somewhere where you can get hold of this. The other one is we can use tools that focus on frequencies, one of them being Evade. So if we set this up how we'd like it, which sounds okay there, and I'm going to reverse this section here, and technically it's not done anything yet, and that's because we're not honed in these frequencies. So we had 5.5 kilohertz on the EQ where we wanted to focus in on, so again we can do this, and there's a bit of a band range, so we'll have a bit on either side of that. So we'll say 5.5, we'll go 3.6ish, 5.5, we'll go 8 point something there. Okay, so now only this frequency area where we've boosted the reverb is poking through. Everything else is being sidechained on either side, but it's letting that frequency operate without any issues in between. So we can widen that a bit. So everything in the grey is being sidechained, and then this bit isn't, and that is where these tools come in handy so much, because you can start really messing around and emphasising things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do with sidechain, for example. And the same again, you can switch this around and just only sidechain those bits, but we want to actually emphasise them bits, and that does help with it. So we can widen that out. It doesn't have to be exactly on the same frequency. You can widen it out to taste of the track. But once you start putting this all together, let's just remove Evade. There's a lot of low detail there that you might not necessarily want. And if we just reduce that a little bit. So it's sidechaining everything else, just kind of dipping it down a little bit to let the bass have room to breathe, and letting those frequencies come through, making sure that offbeat melodies really pop in. Then we've got the Pro R, and if we remove this, it's just adding that little extra sparkle on there, and then finally the sidechain. can hear how that offbeat melody just falls into the background a little bit more. And you'd just be tempted to add another synth in and just boost the volume, or just boost the volume of the synths you've already got. But you can use these little tricks to kind of get around things like that. So let's just remove the reverb, compression, sidechain. That's what we had before. A little bit of reverb. You can hear how that top end becomes a lot clearer with that side chaining. And then that, to really emphasise and just push back those chord sequences a little bit. And that goes for this section here. We could disable evade, for example, on the build up and just have that only kick in when the full track is at pace. But it sounds good there, but I'd technically not have that playing yet. The melody goes flat there if you turn off the compression. Reactivate the sidechain, you start getting all this nice juicy detail pop out. And in turn, what that does is let you hear things like the notorious piano that people struggle to mix into their tracks. You can actually hear that on the top of the track now, whereas before it'd start to slowly get washed out as you tried to balance all your sounds out for the main drop. So it's very clear, and it all just helps. It's a very tiny section of the track. It has a very tiny effect. But that tiny effect goes a long way once the mixing process starts to show signs that the track's not performing as you expected when everything's kind of in full motion. So I hope you found that useful in terms of emphasising your melody. Obviously you can go in and you can emphasise the reverb. You can see that we've got it at minus 2.25 there. We could increase the send gain, we could increase the gain here. We have got quite a lot less gain there, so I'll just quickly demonstrate that actually. We'll turn the gain up so you can see even more how obvious it is when we turn it up. So let's just turn this gain up to just minus 2-ish. Okay, way more reverb there than what I'd want. Let's just remove the sidechain. So at the same time you can hear the reverbs really emphasised on either side of the notes, and it sounds like it's almost washing over the whole thing, but the notes are still poking through because essentially there's more dry signal getting through. Same again if we just remove this EQ boost. Sounds a little bit weak now. It's the melody's poking through, but it seems to have lost a bit of energy in that upper region. Again with evade. You've got a lot of that chord structure snapping away, but that helps to kind of rein it back in and focus on that other melody before everything kind of collapses, and then that's when you're meant to hear those other bits in the builds and kind of the down builds as well. So they're very subtle things to do, but they can be very essential if you do them right. So I hope that helped, covering some of Pro R and some sidechain, and then using further like frequency sidechain like evade to emphasize the top ends. There's so many things that can process these things, and you can start delving into mid and side as well. There's plenty of things that you can do, but that's what I did for that one, so I thought I'd just show you that. So thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe. I upload 3 videos a week. The setup's going to change. It's still going to be 3 videos, but they're going to be on different topics each day. So subscribe to see what's going to be happening there on music related content. And finally, hit like if you think it deserves it, and drop me a comment and let me know what you think. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.